Given the choice, I would always take German over either Italian or American, and I probably wouldn't let Christian Bale behind the wheel of any car that I was going to be a passenger in. And for that matter, Matt Damon either. This week we're going to be talking about Ford versus Ferrari on the Everyman Movie Review. So please forgive any problems with the audio this week. I am testing out my brand new Samson CO2 pencil mics, dual mics, and also getting a little bit of a Tascam room sound mic. Thank you to the patrons and to my family and to Roxy, my girlfriend, who have all helped me get this brand new equipment, so hopefully I can do a much better job with recording. I think the video has been relatively good, but the audio has always been a bit of a problem. I'm really hoping that we are going to take the next step and that the audio will be a lot better this time around. Before we get too deep into it, let's just get the pleasantries out of the way, shall we? Ford vs. Ferrari was directed by James Mangold. It was written by Jez Butterworth, John Henry Butterworth, and Jason Keller. It is, of course, starring, as I said in the intro, Matt Damon as Carroll Shelby, Christian Bale as Ken Miles. John Bernthal makes an appearance as Lee Iacocca, a young Lee Iacocca, who would later take over the entire auto industry. Catriona Belfs as Molly Miles. Noah Jupe as Peter Miles. Josh Lucas as Leo Beebe. Tracy Letts as the Deuce. Henry Ford II. And Remo Girone as the infamous Enzo Ferrari. They are, of course, joined by an outstanding cast of support all over the place, from the pit crew to the group that works for Shelby American Motors to those who work at Ford. They're just surrounded by a group of fantastic actors, and that's probably why this movie was nominated for Best Picture. Not only is the cast fantastic, which they are, but it's beautiful looking and it's full of action. It's got a little bit of suspense, and it just basically keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. So if you don't know the backstory of Ford versus Ferrari, basically the Ford company was kind of slumping as we came into the late 60s. They were making very big cars in a market that was starting to shift towards smaller cars. Lee Iacocca, who had his eye on transforming the car market and who actually did a really good job of selling big cars to consumers that didn't want them, had the idea that they need to rebrand themselves as cool and sexy to the American public. He was one of the minds behind the Mustang, bringing out a convertible and having that entire culture take over America. But he had another idea as well. He wanted to get Ford into the racing business. Now, of course, Ford was already involved in NASCAR, but NASCAR was at that time a regional kind of race club. It was held mostly in the South. It certainly wasn't the national phenomenon that it is today. NASCAR started with bootleggers and moonshiners and them using the cars they already had, which were a lot of Fords. And of course, they took those Fords and souped them up and then brought them to the track. So Ford was a natural match for them, as well as Chevrolet and Oldsmobile at the time. But what Lee Iacocca wanted to do was to make Ford sexy. And in order to do that, you couldn't just use stock cars going around in a circle. What you had to do was find a really beautiful race and build a beautiful car. And he thought that he found that by going to Europe and racing not in Formula One, but finding that world's master style racing. And he thought he found a way to kill two birds with one stone. Enzo Ferrari had built a beautiful car company, and they had perfected the beautiful, sexy race car. But in the process, he had nearly bankrupted the company. And the rumor was he was looking for purchase. There had been feelers out to Fiat, but Fiat just didn't want to pay the price that Enzo wanted to ask for. So Lee set up a meeting between Ford representatives and Ferrari. And they struck a little deal, and they were going through the deal points, but come to find out, they were really just using the offer from Ford to up the number from Fiat and get the number Enzo really wanted. So the Ford-Ferrari partnership never happened. Ferrari ended up being bought by Fiat and, of course, still survives today. And that might have been the end of the story. Maybe Ford moves on and does something else. Except Enzo Ferrari, being the proud man that he is, couldn't leave the meeting without insulting Henry Ford II. And Henry Ford II being a proud man as well, and maybe having a little bit of a chip on his shoulder from being Henry Ford II and not Henry Ford I, said that he couldn't let that go. So instead of buying Ferrari and partnering the company and then racing in Ferraris and putting sexy cars in the American consumer's hands, he decided he was going to spend the money to beat Ferrari at his own game. And that game is, of course, the 24 Hours at Le Mans. Ferrari had won years and years and years in a row, and he'd done that, of course, by bankrupting his company to build race cars. And Ford was set to find out just how expensive it might be in order to beat Ferrari at his own game. But Ford brought in the best man he could think of for the job, and he sent Lee Iacocca off to go find that guy in California. That guy, of course, is probably the most infamous man in American motor, other than Henry Ford, Carroll Shelby. Now, you guys probably know Shelby now as the namesake for the Shelby Cobra, the Mustang version. But long before that, Shelby had his own car company, Shelby American Motor Cars, and he was making the Cobra under his own plate. It would be years and years later until he sold out that nameplate and the brand to Ford when he decided he wanted to retire. So Carroll Shelby, kind of having his own financial problems, gets Henry Ford's attention and decides, I'm going to join you in this little adventure, and we are going to build the best American race car that we can, and we're going to take it to Le Mans, and we're going to show those Italians what for. Didn't use the word Italians, and they used some language that isn't so polite and probably isn't good to use these days. I mean, it wasn't good to use that time either, but maybe it was more accepted at that point. So I have to say that I am not a huge fan of racing movies. There are certain exceptions to that. I was a huge NASCAR fan growing up, so Days of Thunder was like the racing movie to me. And in between, there was a lot of like Formula One or Indy style kind of racing movies, and they just didn't capture my attention. I've never been a huge fan of open wheel racing. Maybe I'm just the personality that likes only left turns. And I think that kind of policy extends to basically any car movies. I do like the Fast and the Furious series, of course. We've talked about the Fast and Furious and their rule before. But, you know, Need for Speed, I love Aaron Paul, and I really wanted to like that movie. It just didn't. It just didn't really capture me. But of course, we wanted to make an effort to go out and see all of the Oscar Best Picture contenders. So Ford versus Ferrari is on that list. We got to go out and see it. It turns out we didn't go out and see it so much as catch it right at home, which probably made it more palatable to me in the end. And in the end, though, I'm really glad that I did. Because despite not being a NASCAR movie like Days of Thunder, it wasn't also a Formula One movie. It wasn't open wheel racing. It was a story about Carroll Shelby, and it was a little bit of a grudge movie. It also was a movie about Ken Miles and this amazing driver and how driven he was, and how in the end, when it all came down to it, he didn't care about all the politics, he just wanted to drive. Now, I do want to get into some spoilers from the movie, and of course, as this was an Oscar contender, it's likely to stay in theaters just a bit longer, so if you don't want to catch those spoilers because you want to catch the movie, then it might be time to go down to the next time below, because the spoilers are coming at you right now. I have to say, this movie was not what I expected, and I've been saying that about a lot of movies. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe the movies aren't being marketed to me, or I'm not seeing the correct marketing materials, but this really was billed as a racing movie. And yes, there is some racing. I mean, Christian Bale spends the majority of his face time in this movie behind the wheel of a car, but that's not really what it's about. It's not about the race. It's about everything that gets them to the race. It's about everything that builds up to that race time. And that doesn't make it a racing movie. It's a movie about friends, because Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles are friends, and they do this thing for each other in a lot of ways, more than they're doing it for anyone else. It's also a movie about overcoming insane obstacles, and I think they really, I knew the story of the GT40 and the whole development of it and the fast pace and all of that, and they had to fly through that whole development cycle, but I think they hit all of the key points that they really needed to hit for the movie to make sense. There was all the frustration with the first year, not getting Ken on the track, not being able to get the car that they wanted because the time schedule just didn't allow, and then getting focused, and Carroll Shelby going to Ford and just being like, if you want to win, if you really want to do this, you got to do it my way. And then them deciding to do that, for the most part anyway. But there was also some things that I'm not sure were true. I kind of want them to be true. I love Carroll Shelby as a character, and when I say that, I don't mean the character Matt Damon was playing. I mean the character of a man that he was, because he was kind of a crazy legend of a man. And I get the idea, a couple of little things that they showed, like dropping the nut in the pit to make the Italian Ferrari team feel like they might have not gotten all the lug nuts on, taking the stopwatches so they couldn't do lap times. That kind of stuff seems like it could be Carroll Shelby. And I don't know that those stories are true, but I want them to be true. And that kind of made those little moments of the story for me. Now, I also kind of knew how it ended. I mean, I remember that the end of the race was forcing Ken Miles to slow down, even though he was having a breakneck pace to finish Le Mans, and that Ford wanted them to finish 1, 2, 3 right together for the picture. I've seen that infamous picture. You can look at it right now. If you want to go to Google, you can find the image of the Fords, the real image from back in the day. I had forgotten that because of his placement, someone else actually won that race. Everybody basically says Ken Miles dominated it and he only lost because of all of the technicalities. The thing is that he didn't win. He lost. He finished second. Well, he finished second. Unless you're running by Ricky Bobby rules. Then if you ain't first, you're last. So he was last, I guess. But then in Talladega Nights 2, his dad says, I got that off a fortune cookie. And Ricky Bobby's like, I built my whole life around that. But I didn't remember that Ken finished second. And maybe that was floating around in there somewhere, but I couldn't remember. I did remember, however, that he died on the track in the GT40. And so I had this kind of palpable concern all the way through, because I'm like, maybe I'm misremembering. Did he die at some point and we're going to have this whole tragedy during the middle of the movie? But, every time he got into an accident, every time it was just like, oh God, is this the moment? Is this the moment? I watched the movie with Corey, the other half of the O The Anthem podcast, and his girlfriend Rachel, and Rachel had looked it up and saw that he died as well. So, she just blurted that out during the middle of the movie. And so it was kind of like waiting for the hammer to drop. And then it didn't drop till right at the end. And as soon as I saw them in the desert, I was like, oh, that's right. It happened in the desert. It happened on the track. He didn't have the fire suit on. And they make mention of the fire suit earlier in the movie where Peter the son is talking to one of the crew. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is the moment. I'm just waiting for it. And you see him going around the turns. And then all of a sudden it's like plop, plop, plop. And the brake doesn't work. And you just know that that's going to be the time. And it was heartbreaking. Even though I knew it was coming, it was still heartbreaking. So I can't imagine for people who didn't know that was coming, how they must have felt about that. So in the end, like I said, it's not really a story about racing. It's a story about friends and, that scene where Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles are wrestling like they're 12-year-old boys, but they're punching each other hard and they're throwing food from the bags at each other, and Molly is just basically sitting out on the front lawn watching them and waiting them to finish. I don't know, that scene itself just resonated with me really strongly. I imagine there's a lot of truth in that scene. I've never had, I guess, that experience so much, but I can imagine 5 years from now, 10 years from now, just getting to the point where you get frustrated and you start getting into a fist fight, but none of my friends are in shape to be in a fist fight with me, and especially 5 or 10 years from now. So we just basically exhaust each other doing little punches and little hits. We're certainly not going to be like Brad Thomas in Brawl in Cell Block 99. But that's going back to another review. Let's keep our eyes focused on Ford versus Ferrari. And, let's just go ahead and invite everybody back in. Spoilers are done, and everybody's going to join us again right now. So in the end, I went into this movie thinking that if I do a review, I'm going to have to tell people, if racing movies aren't your thing, well, maybe this movie's not for you. And that is probably true to a degree. There is a lot of racing, so if that doesn't interest you at all, the concept is about building a race car. So if you don't know anything about racing, if you have no interest in that at all, probably not the movie for you. But I think Matt Damon does an amazing job as Carroll Shelby. He embodies the character. I wondered, why was it in the Best Picture race? Then I saw it and I realized it. But then after that, I kind of did a little analysis and I realized I could almost picture when the things were shot, because I could see scenes where he was really embodying the character and scenes where it feels like it was earlier in the shoot schedule and he just wasn't there yet with his character. And I feel like it was the same thing with Ken Miles and Christian Bale. There were scenes where I really feel like he embodied the character and I got lost in it. But there were others where it was just kind of loose and like he was still trying to figure it out. Especially scenes with Molly. I think that relationship changed a lot, even though the timeline wasn't so much that it should change that. I think ideally, it is a beautiful movie. I see why it was Best Picture. The subject matter was fantastic. The script was very well written. And it's true to life as far as I know. So, I think that's important as well. And, the characters are fantastic and it's very well acted. But there are those little things that just say, hey, this is why you are not going to win, even if you're nominated. And, of course, the biggest of those is probably that it's a Fox property, and Fox no longer exists. It's now part of Disney, so Disney did nothing to push the movie at all, of course. It was pushing its own movie, and still, they got into the race. So congratulations to them, and, of course, to all the nominees, especially to Parasite, who took home Best Picture. You guys should go back and check out my Parasite review, where I made a lot of mistakes because I don't know anything about Korean cinema, but I can tell you that I really enjoyed the movie, and you can see my recommendation if you go check out the link that's right up there. But overall, if you go through the questions, you really kind of have to be interested in racing. You don't have to be passionate about it, and you don't even have to be like I was when I was 13 and just watching every week of NASCAR. You don't have to know what Le Mans is. It would help. It's a 24-hour race. But you don't have to know in order to watch and enjoy the movie. You just basically have to have a friend. You have a friend that you would do anything for no matter what. That friend that will ask you to do crazy stuff all the time and get you drawn into a bunch of drama. If you have one of those, then you're going to understand the relationship between Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby. And if you ever been in a spot where you just kind of have to do things that maybe you don't want to do just to get by, then you're going to understand Carroll's position and why he brings his friend Ken in. And, it's the heartache of loss and the passion of win and the going back and forth between the two. And just when you think things are straight, they're not. And then, maybe things are going to get better, maybe they're going to get worse. And that all brings us to the culmination, which you're only going to see if you go to the theater and check out Ford versus Ferrari. It's still there, at least for a limited time. So make sure you go catch it in your local Cineplex as soon as possible. So there you have it, another episode of the Everyman Movie Review in the books. Right at the top here, I want to thank my patrons over at Patreon. I could not do this without you guys. Like I said at the top of the episode, and I keep saying I'm having new equipment delivered, it seems like all the time. I just got a set of Samson CO2 pencil condenser microphones that are hopefully improving the audio quality immensely. Cameras are coming in, lights are coming in, new computers, new software, everything. I could not do that without you. And of course, the moral support. There's nothing better than getting a message that just says, hey, keep it up, or I'm listening, I'm subscribed, I'm loving the content. That kind of stuff just keeps me motivated and keeps me going. And my patrons are on the front line of the people doing that. So thank you to all of you guys. If you want to be one of the chosen few, it's so easy. Go on over to patreon.com, that's patreon.com/Robert N. Cheek, and for as little as $1 a month, you too can become a supporter of mine. You get shout outs in all the books and the videos like I'm doing right now. Basically in any of my projects, I mention and give thanks to the people who support me on the front line. And while you're cruising around the interwebs, don't forget that the Everyman Movie Review is available on social media now. You can check it out on Instagram, on Twitter, and on Facebook. All of those links are going to be found down below in the description. Make sure you check it out. Come and join the community. Say hello to everyone who follows along. Send me a message. Let me know what you think about this particular podcast or YouTube episode, whatever it is you're watching, however you're consuming it. And speaking of that, it's available in both. You can find the videos at youtube.com/Rob Cheek, and you can find the podcast episodes at anchor.fm/Everyman Movie Reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you leave a comment below and let me know what you think there as well. And while you're here, hit the like button, let everybody know that you like the video, and maybe subscribe. It'll let you know when the next video is out. If you're listening on Anchor, go on over to anchor.fm/Everyman Movie Review/message. That'll let you send me a voicemail or a text, and if you want, I can actually play it right on the podcast version of the show to let everybody know what you think about my review of this movie. And of course, if you want to find me on social media, all of my accounts across all the social media are at Robert N. Cheek. That's going to be Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, Snapchat, everything at Robert N. Cheek. You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/Rob Cheek. Working on changing that, hopefully soon. And of course, don't forget robertncheek.com, where you can find everything about me and all the stuff that I'm working on. And you can sign up for the mailing list to be the first to know about all the new projects before they come out. And if you can't get enough of me, why would you? You can join me every single Tuesday, where me and my buddy Corey do the The Anthem podcast. We talk about news, we talk about sports, we talk about events happening around the world, especially here in LA, where we currently live, and back in Baltimore, our home away from home. New episodes of that podcast are available every Tuesday. You can find the video version at youtube.com/The Anthem, and it's available in podcast form on all your podcatchers, but the easiest one, of course, anchor.fm/The Anthem. And finally, thank you as always for checking out this show. New episodes are available every single Thursday, as well as one day in between, Sunday or Monday usually, generally. You can find a new episode as well. I try to do a little bit mix of new movies and a little bit of old movies, stuff I find on streaming, either on Amazon or HBO or anywhere that I can find it, Netflix. But you also see a lot of new movie reviews from stuff that's still in the theaters, and maybe even second-run theaters, because I'm a huge proponent of the second-run theater. So make sure you join us next time for the next review. And of course, we got more projects coming all the time over on YouTube. A new episode of Rob Explains Everything is coming very soon. I'm getting ready to shoot that, in fact. So make sure you check out that as well. And until then, of course, have a great week, everybody.